PGA Nation, we are back. Shout out to Joel, who's on vacation, but I feel that it's not the same if we don't introduce with PGA Nation. We're back, and delighted to be joined this week by the one and only Byron, Model Maniac, who is one of the sharpest in the business. I'm sure you all know by now who he is. If you're not, jump onto Twitter. He is the model maniac. He's a spreadsheet maniac. He is a very, very sharp follower on Twitter in terms of all of his golf picks. Byron, nice to see you, my bro. How are you doing?
Hello, my guys. No, it's good to be back on the show. Good to not be in the audience. Good to be showing them what's going on behind the screens over here. So looking forward to just a fun little evening of DraftCast. Let's do this thing, man.
Absolutely. Well, you know, it's a big time event. FedEx Cup playoffs are here. The field is set, top 70 here, and so we had to bring back one of our favorite VIP guests in Byron. So thank you so much for joining us, and I'm excited to see who you take this week. And one thing that we always need to do every week is the fit check. And Spence, of course, representing Memphis, Tennessee. How are you doing, Spence?
I'm doing well, David. You know, if you want to do Joel full justice on this show, as I'm giving this talk right now, if you want to freeze and just stop moving for a second. Yeah, exactly. That'll do a full justice for Joel. But no, it was a good tournament last week. Added Aaron Rye at 18-1, had a great head-to-head betting card moving into the playoffs as you talked about here. But 70-man field, there's going to be a lot for us to discuss. A lot of ownership is condensing in the same areas as it always does in these fields, but we'll have these conversations. We'll run through the board and we'll give our best picks on the show.
Yeah, and look, I guess one thing is that now that we've got the signature events kind of set up in this similar kind of manner with top 70 golfers, we have obviously had a recent event with the Olympics where it was also a reduced field as a result. You know, we're getting kind of used, I guess, to the condensing of ownership that you see in these events where, you know, we shouldn't be so shocked if a player's 15% and suddenly think that that's chalky. It's obviously going to be a factor of the nature of the way that the field is set up in these elements. But touching on the Olympics, I mean, it'd be remiss of me not to mention Lydia Ko, who completed golf last week at the Olympic Games, matched up her silver at Rio, a bronze at Tokyo with a gold medal at the Paris Olympics. For me, it was one of the greatest golfing feats that we've ever seen, mainly because the women's fields have been absolutely superb. We've only seen one player in the top 100 not in the field in Rio, only two players in the top 100 not at the Olympic Games in Tokyo. So the women's games have always had the best fields at the Olympics, and she's completed a trio of medals. So absolutely superb, gets into the Hall of Fame. Very, very proud Kiwi at the moment. What about you guys? How did you find the Olympics? Was there any sports that you guys really got into, or has it just been all golf mode as we've led into the playoffs?
I've bet Lydia Ko as a single bullet just in case she won gold. So I just woke up on Sunday. I was like, oh, I got a golf sweat, you know, and it's the ladies. So she got antsy on that back nine, man. After that hole that she rinsed it on those two water holes on that back nine, the par fours, they were taking soul. So that was kind of fun seeing all that go on there. I enjoyed, like we were chatting about there, the track cycling is a big one for me. It's very unique. It's very technical. It's, you know, these guys in the aerodynamic slipstream positions are like incredible to see, guys winning by 0.01, you know, like it's nuts stuff. So really fun to watch that. And then obviously just everything, you know, especially when the people, like when one Olympian is beating another bunch of Olympians by like a landslide. That's just incredible to me because these are all like the top 0.1% of the world's population at that sport. And one other person is just bitching them, you know, completely dominating them, which is kind of also fun to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a couple of reels out there in the social media world of average people trying to complete Olympic sports, just to put in perspective, I guess, the nature of their achievements, which are always a good watch. So go out there and find some of those. But Spence, any favorites from the Olympics that you were following?
I always like track and field. Like one of my core memories from when I was young was the 96 Olympics with Michael Johnson running in the gold shoes. So I've always been drawn to track and field. There were a lot of good races there. I'll ask you guys this before we move on officially. The breakdancing competition. Have you seen that ray gun, the girl from Australia?
The one that's fighting off epileptic attacks mid sequence, or what's?
We could call it that, but that was it was an interesting performance to say the least.
I asked my girlfriend what her favorite moment of the Olympics was, and her answer was ray gun. Just from the quality memes that came out of it, it was hilarious. Anytime that the Aussies do something of that ilk, us here in New Zealand, more than happy to have a laugh and enjoy it. But yeah, look, it was very, very enjoyable watching that. I thought it was like your mum turns up at a party and tries to be cool, and that was the result.
I know that they're not bringing it back for the 2028 Olympics, and ray gun has gotten a lot of flack in the space from what that performance was. But I will say this. She brought a lot of attention to breakdancing that it wouldn't have normally gotten. You know, people might want to be a little bit like temper whatever they're saying towards her. If you are a breakdancing fan and you were excited to see it in the Olympics, like she's not the reason why it's not coming back, but it definitely brought a lot of eyes to the sport. You know, at the end of the day, we're all human. She did the best she could do. Whether she should have been at the Olympics or not is another story, but you know, she should keep her head held high. I thought, like, not all publicity is necessarily good, but she definitely was one of the big stars of the game, whether it's for the right or wrong reasons. I don't know.
Yeah, look, I agree with that.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
God damn it. Sorry, go, Dave.
McLaughlin Levrone, is that where we go?
Yeah.
She's amazing.
She's a queen, dude.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah. The sport for me, and we really got into this at the Tokyo Olympics, but my girlfriend and I love the sports climbing. Like, sports climbing is fascinating because not only is it like this physical sport, but also the strategic kind of tactical nature, trying to solve the different problems on the climbing wall is absolutely enthralling. And I don't know if you guys saw, but all the Olympic athletes had to do a recording of what their voice sounded like, I guess, in order to help the commentators when pronouncing their names. And the leading female sports climber is Janja Garnbret, and her voice of Janja Garnbret. And as soon as you say Janja Garnbret, well, then you can just talk in a communist voice from then on out. It just immediately floats into it. So she is an absolute monster, and she was great. So without further ado, that's the Olympics covered. Shout out again to Lydia Ko, Scottish effort, just doing Scottish effort things, costing us money. We had a Hideki Matsuyama 35-1. Shout out to him. Finishing in bronze, couldn't make a putt on the last 6 holes to really put the pressure on. But we head to the FedEx Cup playoffs, and very important event because not only is there a huge amount of money on the table, but we want to see golfers get into that top 50. That's what's going to make sure that these guys get to play in all of the signature events next year, those $20 million prize purses. The top 50 is the cutoff to make the BMW Championship and qualify for those signature events. So we'll jump to Spence with a course breakdown of TPC Southwind, a course that we've seen a number of times on the PGA Tour. Spence, what does it take to be successful at TPC Southwind?
I thought when I started building my model, this was an extremely straightforward par 70 property. It's going to accentuate ball striking at the end of the day. We've seen that come to fruition 9 times over the past 12 years. When you look at the winner of the event being the one who's led the field in strokes gained tee to green, you're going to get these narrow zoysia fairways that help to enhance that metric, since thick Bermuda rough creates a secondary penalty beyond just the 11 holes that feature water. That zoysia conversation, I thought, is a really notable piece here because you get this stark contrast of balls that are in the fairway that'll sit up for second shots. That's a very unique texture versus this thick Bermuda rough that's going to be sticky to hit your irons out of, especially with all the water that's going to enter the mix. Like, there are certain players, and we don't need to get into all those players are, but I'll name one of them. Justin Thomas is one of those names that has seen a significant improvement when you've put him on comp setups with the expected driving. There's a reason why he's won this tournament, multiple top 15 finishes. Now, whether his game is ready to compete again in this season, that's another conversation that we can have. But I think the takeaway I want everyone to hear from this is that when you get this tee to green answer from within the data, it always starts pushing the narrative into 2 directions. So 1, you get a reduction of putting, just naturally that comes into the mix here. And then 2, you get an overall enhancement, specifically here when it's more of a plotters club down sort of a course of finding fairways. There's a miscut penalty that comes into play. and then striking your approach shots well from the critical distances. That range that you're looking for this week is going to land between 125 to 200 yards. Nearly 67% of second shots occur from that distance. That's a total that's almost 12% higher than what golfers face weekly. If you want to add some putting to the mix, and I do think it's a way that I can make my model a little different. There are a few ways you can go about that. Fast Bermuda putting was one of them. I always like to create this in situations like this where I take opportunities created and I mix that in with expected make percentage. That's more so of what golfers are going to create the most opportunities and then what the projected make percentages are from there. It's like a really fancy, nerdy way to try to figure out who's going to actually produce birdies in these spots. But, at the end of the day, and if you guys have anything you want to add to this, go for it. But this is a ball striking course. If you do not have ball striking at your core, you're going to have a trouble finding high-end success at this tournament.
There you have it. I mean, best course breakdown in the business. I particularly love that you honed in on that 125 to 200 yard approach metric that popped in the data for me as well. If you go back historically and look at this golf course, particularly just the lack of par fives, the two par fives are reachable by the entire field and two really. And it does take out that kind of 200 yard plus approach metric that we usually see in a really condensed approach range in terms of the huge number of shots that come from those mid irons. I think is really key. There's always the fairways, really interesting. You don't see them often on the PGA Tour. TPC Craig Ranch and East Lake, the only two other courses that use that in the regular rotation. You've had a few of the major championship venues have that. Valhalla had it. Bellarive had it as well, when you can link those two with Brooks Koepka as well, having found success at both courses. So I think that's key. And then you mentioned about the Bermuda Rough. I noted in the Greenskeeper notes that they've actually grown out the Bermuda Rough even longer this year. So it was 2.5 previous year. It's gone up another 1/2 inch to 3 inches. It is going to be very, very thick. Now, compare that to, say, Kentucky Bluegrass. You might see 4.5 inch Kentucky Bluegrass, but Bermuda has a tendency for the ball to go right down to the bottom of the grass, and you can end up with some really dreadful lies. We saw that with Max Grazeman last week, where he couldn't even see a ball 1 yard in front of him that Kuchar had to basically point out to him where his golf ball was, even though he was standing just off the fairway. So very, very penal test. I think Spence has absolutely nailed the course breakdown. Byron, anything to add before we bring up the draft board? And I will add, audience, you've been gifted the first pick by Spencer here. So very, very generous from Spence, but you can start putting names in the chat while Byron tells us about TPC Southwind.
No, I think if I try to add anything more to that, I'll be lying. I just think it's a great week to kind of pick your poison. And some shout outs to Joel here in the chat. I think the pre-lock WD is always respected by us DFS communities, so you never want Joel WDing mid-show. So we thank you for that, Joel. Those that rostered you are appreciative of that.
Fantastic. Well, audience, you are on the clock. In the meantime, while you're putting your picks in, just to remind you, that is the player who receives a second nomination. So put a player in the chat that you would like for team audience to draft. Whoever gets seconded first, whoever gets that second nomination is going to be the audience pick. Standard stakes style draft. We use DraftKings salaries around here, and you have to stay under the salary cap because you can't just build an illegitimate lineup as much as the audience would obviously want to. And it looks like we have got a backup on Rory. So we've got Zach, Jeffers, and Silent Assassin, both regulars in the chat, leading our team audience with Rory with the first pick. I, for one, am shocked. I thought they were going to absolutely just lock in on Scotty Scheffler here, first out of the marks, as it were. Byron, what say you on the audience's kind of strange decision to go Rory with the first pick here?
No, I'm thankful they went with Rory, because I'll be taking the option that they should have taken there. But I think, you can't really fault any kind of decision you make in the top 5. Yeah, I think Spence and I were chatting about it yesterday, that it's just wherever the ownership takes you at the top here is kind of where you want to find yourself. So before that really comes into play, I'm going to just take the best value, and that's Colin Morikawa at $10,000. Love his ability to find the fairways. Love the lack of 200-plus iron shots we'll be experiencing this week. I think that's one of his still, lesser ranges on the approach side of things for him. So love what Colin's been up to. The putting's been great, but he can ball strike a golf course to death, and I'm expecting him to bludgeon it this week again.
I am shocked. I can't believe that Scotty Scheffler's made it to the third round here. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to think about this now. I really like Colin Morikawa. He is a fairway finder. Obviously, we've seen a really positive correlation of that TPC Southwind. The average fairway width here is just 25 yards. It is very narrow. We've seen an increased rough as a result of that as well, which is going to add to the driving accuracy, let alone the 11 holes with water in play. And Colin Morikawa has been excellent between that 100 to 200 yard approach bucket, which is very, very key. He's one of the best in the world within that range. So I do really want to reiterate, I do like that play on Morikawa from Byron. Spence, thoughts on these first two picks with Rory McIlroy and Colin Morikawa? More than anything, just to buy me some time to think about how I can get Scheffler in here now.
I'm running ownership right now. I forgot to do it before the show. So as all these picks have been coming in, I've been trying to update the ownership. I was surprised that Scotty was not the number one pick. I think like beyond the odds-on favorite that the audience would have gone in that direction. Although the one thing I will say is Rory has been catching a ton of steam here in the market the last, I would say 12 hours. Like I see him right now as the third projected owned player, Colin Morikawa being second, Scotty being first. Not shocked that this is how it's gone beyond the Scotty answer. Like I think you have probably the safest player on the entire board for the price in Colin Morikawa. I think Rory, you do have intriguing upside that I would have liked the ownership to be a little bit lower than what we're getting right now. Like to me, this was a much different position when I thought he was going to be sub 15%. It starts pushing it a little bit in the other direction, the other way, but I have no problems with anybody of however they want to start at the top. In all reality, I thought, like Byron said, we discussed this on our show together. It's a really strong group that you're going to have to pick your poison, but there's not a name that can be given from that section that I'm going to tell anybody like I'm against it at its core.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, look, this is the top 70 golfers on the PGA Tour. So the guys who are at the top of the board obviously playing great golf, and that's why they're there, right? And so I really don't think you can go wrong. It might come down to playing some ownership. I think that might be the way to kind of approach it. I mean, in that regard, we'll see if Aberg gets taken, but Aberg's going to be the lowest owned of those group, and maybe that's just an interesting way to approach it, is just take the guys who are going to be the lowest owned at that 10K kind of plus range. I am not going to take Scheffler. I'm going to, again, shockingly defer, mainly because he's lost putting now 3 of the last 4 tournaments. He hasn't got a great historical record here. Ownership's pushing like 30 to 35%, and I'm much more intrigued by what Hideki Matsuyama is going to do this week. So I'm going to take Hideki Matsuyama. Obviously, we were a close miss on him at the Olympics when he was third. He only needed one more putt or two coming down that stretch. Finished with 6 straight pars, but was constantly finding greens. And that's kind of been the recipe with Hideki Matsuyama. The big thing for me is that we see a 35% increase in expected output on approach when we get to Zoysia properties. And that's comparing all of the 5 kind of previous venues where we regularly see this grass type. He jumps up to 6 in this field for strokes gained approach on Zoysia properties compared to 12th when we're looking at the last 12 months on approach. So we do see expected output increase in that regard. Obviously very accurate off the tee as well, which I think is key, but he is just playing excellent golf at the moment. It's a lot more consistent. I haven't got any injury concerns for perhaps the first time in my life with Hideki, which probably means he definitely withdraws, but I do like him here with the first selection. I think that we expect a good week from him, and he just seems too cheap.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you would have gone Scotty, because now you put me in a real bind of a situation here, and I think tip my hand, and I would like a second also. I'll let Byron talk about it when I get finished. I probably, if hypothetically this draft would have started Rory, Morikawa, Scotty, I was probably going to go Hideki and Corey Connors. Was the route that I kind of saw most fit there for how I want to do it. Now, it's a tough decision with Scotty. I'm going to consider this myself. I'll kick it over to you, Byron, as you talk about the play so far.
I love the vamp before handing the vamp off, Spence. That's next level strategy there that I really appreciate about you. So, yeah, I mean, I'd pull this trigger on Scotty 12-4. You know, it's real comfortable to spend your salary on everyone else after that. You know, we're stopping at the 6K range this week. We've seen Scotty closer to 13 with a 5K range. So, I don't know. It's an interesting juxtaposition you can find yourself in there, but I think it's time to give you the mic back here to make your decision.
So I'm going to start with Corey Connors just because I've already put this out into the airwaves here and I know he's not going to fall back to me. I guess the one problem that I have with a Connors Scheffler start specifically is that's probably going to be one of the more popular ways that people begin builds. And that worries me ever so slightly here. But, look, Corey Connors specifically, we always can talk about the putter being a concern. He's only ever won at the Valero. We're talking about a ball striker's course where 9 of the last 12 times the winner has been the one who has led the tournament from tee to green. He also has an expected increase in putting projections. A little bit has to do with what we've seen from him recently inside of my model. But anytime that I can find a ball striker that has these upside returns with the putter, even if we're still just talking about a fringe top 40 sort of a putter in this field, I don't necessarily know if he even needs to gain strokes with the putter to work himself up this leaderboard. To win this tournament, I will make a prediction here, which is not like a bold prediction that he will have to gain. We've seen people in the past win this golf tournament while losing strokes. That feels more like the Scotty Scheffler answer that would come into play than what we're going to get with Connors. Like, to me, Connors, Morikawa, I still think we're going to need to get them to be at least neutral or better with the flat stick. But to me, this is a very common start to a build from how everybody's gone to begin with. I'll start with Corey Connors, and just because this is not how I planned to do it originally, I will end the slide of Scotty Scheffler and figure out what I want to do from there, just because I didn't expect him to fall this far down the board.
Also, just an interesting move to take Scotty Scheffler in the second round, just so we can say that Scotty Scheffler win in the second round there, which I really appreciate. I really like Connors. He was going to be my next selection. So that is a direct steal from Spencer there. He's gained putting in 5 of his last 7 starts now, which is always a great sign for Corey Connors. After Scotty Scheffler, Corey Connors is the best in this field from 100 to 200 yards on approach. We're obviously going to get the driving accuracy output from him as well, which I really appreciate. So I think that he's an excellent choice. 6th last time out here as well. Byron, any thoughts on Connors and any more comments on Scotty Scheffler falling to the second round here?
It's essentially the same versions of each other, but just in varying degrees, like Scotty being 4th degree burns and Corey just first, or whatever, whichever was the most important or dangerous. But neither can really putt when it matters, and then they can ball strike this golf course to absolute pieces. So, I mean, we're looking for guys like this, and they make tons of sense. And, Corey providing you with that nice salary at $9,100 isn't terrible.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting take as well. Corey Connors is basically the poor man's version of Scotty Scheffler, elite ball striking, which this course always tends to identify. Sometimes can putt, sometimes can absolutely not putt. So I think that's a really interesting way to frame that question. All right, so back to me for my second pick here, and I'm going to go and take Tom Kim at 8,900. I'm really interested in your ownership numbers on Tom Kim. I'm currently seeing 13%, which is much lower than I expected on him for a golfer who is playing very, very well. I mean, he was 3rd in the first round at the Olympics last time out for the first round, and then finished up in 8th. He's got a good record here, including a 13th on his first look, a number of low rounds. He's hitting it longer than we've ever seen, but as well as keeping his accuracy, the approach numbers are very, very good. Tom Kim at 8,900 with the ownership that I'm seeing. I think a lot of that's coming down from, you've got Matsuyama, Connors, Henley right above him. Sungjae Im right below them is going to be popular, and it's like Tom Kim was kind of in this like middle ground where he's getting kind of missed, but he's playing great golf, and I just expected his ownership to be much higher than we're seeing. So I'll go to you, Byron. Any thoughts on Tom Kim, and then you're on the clock with your next pick.
Yeah, I was taking a look at my betting track record, and he's one of my biggest money pits for some reason. I've just never got him right. As much as I adore him and have hit 2 of his 3 outrights, it's just been tricky to pinpoint his level of commitment each week. He seems like this. Each time he's on tour, he seems to become more and more like a teenager, and as he's getting out of his teens. So it's kind of just like this volatile personality that I'm not in the mood to kind of deal with from a betting perspective, but maybe in a big GPP DFS setting, I could see Tom Kim there. So someone who isn't as volatile as Tom Kim and is actually showing up inside the top 10 at the fourth highest rate at 42% of the time last 12 months is Russell Henley. He's $9,000. And I don't know, if you think about a golf course that's very suited to what he gets up to, kind of like Wyndham, kind of like Sony, I think accurate off the tee, really good inside the 200s to 125s, and he loves himself some Bermuda putting, and he's become a really good putter lately. So give me some Russell Henley. When your short game is the best part of your game in 2024, going to a golf course that suits your ball striking even better, I like that, coming together of skill sets here.
Yeah, look, Russell, for the record, Russell Henley opened at 50-1 in betting markets, which would have intrigued me, but he very sharply got bet down to 35s. Now, like, you're struggling to kind of find 33s on him. So I think that's really interesting that the odds markets have moved very much in favor of Russell Henley here. Spence, the audience is on the clock, so get your picks in for your wrap round. So you've got 2 to get in here, audience. So nominate some names. But Spence, I'll jump to you. Thoughts on Russell Henley and Tom Kim here, both in a kind of similar range. And, maybe if you were going to play one or the other, where would you kind of land?
Let me start with the Henley part of the discussion. He's going to be popular, but I always talk about, and I already talked about it previously with Corey Connors, Russell Henley's kind of that like 1B version for me of what Corey Connors is this week. And we really get these high-end marks on Bermuda putting surfaces. He jumps from a 2-year baseline in my model on any surface from the 31st putter to specifically on Bermuda here to 13th. So I thought that there's a real reason why people are going to Russell Henley this week. I certainly understand why. And I agree with what you have said, David, about Tom Kim, with this just being more shallow ownership than I would have anticipated for him at this moment. Like, if you directly compare him to, we'll just say Hideki and down to Sung Jae, he very well, like him or Finau, will probably be the lowest owned man in that range. And it's a surprising result because I may rather have Corey Connors. I may rather have Hideki. But when I start comparing Tom Kim to the rest of those names, I think I'd rather take the ownership discount that you're getting with Tom Kim. As I've kind of said for all the draft picks, though, there's not a pick that's been made yet that I am like sitting here and questioning why somebody's done it. I think things have been pretty standard.
Yeah, nothing too controversial yet. I mean, shout out as well to the GOAT of the first round leader, Sia Najad, who backs up the Tom Kim play by saying Tom Kim equals your first round leader. Shout out to Sia in the chat here. It looks like the audience have got their 2 picks in, which are Sungjae Im and Aaron Rai. I'll share that Sungjae Im was going to be my next selection, so that's another steal. We do tend to see a lot of steals in these 70-man fields, but I think Sungjae Im is playing some great golf, and I think this is one of the better spots compared to the other situations he's found himself in on other golf courses, where his output has still been excellent. Aaron Rai, I'm a little concerned by the ownership, obviously coming off that first win. A lot of people are going to be jumping onto the Aaron Rai train here. Byron, I'll jump to you. Sungjae Im, Aaron Rai, any qualms or any advice on these 2 selections? And then you're on the clock with your 3rd pick.
Yeah, I don't know. Aaron Rai is going to be interesting. I think I'm going to land up betting this guy to win this tournament because there's a narrative on my show earlier that someone mentioned, why would you not bet the 2-glove bandit to go back-to-back when a man called Glove literally went back-to-back at the same 2 tournaments this time last year? The skill profile fits this golf course perfectly. It's like, what are we doing? So I'm on Aaron Rai at 50. So let's go back to back with this one. And I think the audience is onto something. Sungjae Im, congrats on another non-win this week, but good to have him kind of hanging out there in a good lineup and potentially, providing the fodder to the top 5s and top 10s you need.
That is a very interesting narrative. One I haven't thought of, the fact that Aaron Rai wears 2 gloves, that Lucas Glover last year won the Wyndham Championship and then at TPC Southland at the FedEx St. Jude Championship. Very, very interesting. Double gloved for extra protection. I love it. Byron, you are on the clock with your 3rd pick.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make my guy Bjorn Hun on as a $7,600 kind of just, I'm going to start nudging my salary up as I make some picks until I can figure out where we're going. But Benny On has typically shown up when you don't expect him. He played quite nicely at the Sony to start the year. He's a pretty good golfer on these shorter positional tracks where you have to club down. He's a very good long iron player. So that helps on these kind of courses, because although that 200 plus mark is kind of out of the approach side of things, you're still going to be hitting those 250 yard driving irons on some of these holes where you kind of trying to just hit the fairway. So he'll thrive in that department, and the iron play for him is fantastic. And again, he can be part of that team ball striking, no putt situation, and has shown the propensity to putt well every now and then as well. And I'll just be looking forward to seeing what he can do. He's very affordable, very cheap, and he's had some seriously good performances this year with a lot of top 5 finishes.
Yeah, and we often find that at the FedEx Cup playoffs when we get there, sometimes guys who haven't necessarily been in the greatest form lately, but who have had a great year, suddenly show up at the FedEx Cup playoffs and sort of acknowledge the fact that they've played well for the rest of the year. So I think that's really interesting. I think this 5% ownership makes them really interesting. Spence, I'm going to be on the clock here next, so I'll jump to you. Any comments on the Sungjae Im, Aaron Rai picks from the audience, and any commentary on Benny Ahn from you?
So for Ben On, I had this conversation with Byron yesterday on our show together. He was one of the biggest increasers in my model when you put him on the Zoysia fairways of how he produced. So I thought that was an interesting return. The other thing that I also talked about Byron with is Aaron Rai and this strokes gained total output that we've seen from him. So from the 2-year running model that I have, which is going to be much more geared towards 2024 at this moment, he is 6th in this field for strokes gained total. That is behind Scotty, Rory, Xander, Oberg, Morikawa. He is the next name that enters the mix. So, I do think that any time that you have ownership that starts immediately crashing in on a name that just won, you have to question if there's been too much movement. I do think the price is too cheap though. So for that reason, I'm probably in, and you can figure out a way to get different in other spots.
Yeah, very, very interesting selection there. Potentially some awesome leverage if Benny Ahn plays well at just 5% ownership. I'm going to go and grab some value here because Spencer is going to have to, having both Scheffler and Corey Connors in his lineup. And I'm going down the board quite a way. I'm going to take Austin Eckroat at 6,300. We saw him come out and finish 6th last week at the Wyndham Championship. What I love with Austin Eckroat is he's both long and straight off the tee, which I think is a really lethal combination around TPC Southwind. We've also seen his ability with his ball striking, and sometimes it's the putter that lets him down. Well, these aren't the most difficult greens in the world. They are pretty flat. There's not too many undulations. The greens are pretty small, so you aren't going to leave yourself too many lag putts here. I also like that he won at PGA National earlier this year in the Cognizant Classic, another golf course where strong drivers and strong ball strikers have typically done very well. There's a lot of water in play. So I like that he's coming in with 3 straight finishes where he's putting very, very well. 6th place last week, winner at the PGA National. I think he's good value at 6,300. Great way to save some salary. Spence, you're going to be on the clock here with back-to-back picks, but love to hear from you on what you think of the Eckroat.
Accuracy golfer inside of my model with the way that I ran it for this course, that also graded 3rd for average to easy scoring off the tee production. So I think you get a really cheap price tag here for a golfer that has built-in, we'll call it upside from the profile that he has. I think he's an interesting name down here where, I'm going to be honest with you, David, and I don't know if I'm going to go this route yet, and I'm going to kind of talk everybody through this. There is a potential that I might just go so rogue with this lineup that you're not going to see anything that looks like this in the entire space. And, we've had this conversation with Joel quite frequently because Joel is the one that typically finds himself in these spots where he starts Scotty Xander or Scotty Rory or whatever it is, and he has absolutely no money down at the bottom. And my concern that I always tell everybody when they do that is in a 70-man field, to actually compete, you need a little bit of a flatter distribution than what you end up getting when you go completely boom or bust. And when you go so boom or bust in a lineup that you have 2 or 3 names that are at the bare minimum of what you're doing, it's going to be hard even no matter what you put around it. I don't know, guys. How crazy do we want to get here? I guess let's make this as wild as a lineup can possibly look, and we'll just say from a roster construction standpoint, what happens when you do a similar route to this? I know I could wait to take him. The reason why I'm not going to is because I'd rather just get the player that I want right now. One, I don't necessarily need the leverage that I'm going to have that David talked about with this player because I'm already going to be unique with this build. But two, one of the things that I am Zach, this is not stalling. The pick has been made right now, but you know, I am pretty good though at filibustering through the conversation until my mind gets made up with it. I am always looking on the board for a golfer that enters that Scotty Xander mix that is not being priced accordingly. And on DraftKings, it's a different conversation than the outright market. I think for me that there's two players that get the closest to that range. We'll exclude Rory for a second from this mix. It's Morikawa, who the market in the outright market has respected. A lot of ownership's coming on DraftKings. And then it's Ludwig Åberg. And if I take Åberg here, like, well, technically I don't need a leverage sort of a play on a lineup that's going to put me literally down at the bottom of what we're looking for of just pick after pick. I'm going to take Åberg. He's the number one player in my model in projected opportunities gained mixed with projected make percentage. I don't know if we've ever been in a spot where somebody can't actually fill out a build. This might be where I go, where I don't actually have 6 players that can fit into a lineup, but I will go first with Ludwig Åberg. And then to start going down the salary scale here, I will take Mackenzie Hughes at 6,200.
Are you kidding me?
One of the things that I want to find for these golfers, and this is what Byron and I have talked about in the past too, when we talk about our DraftKings show, is I want to find players with an elite skill set. I want somebody that can pop in a certain metric that can bring them up the board. And putting here has not been the core requirement of what everybody's going to talk about. But at the end of the day, Mackenzie Hughes has a putter in his bag that if somebody is going to find high-end success here, it's a Mackenzie Hughes sort of a skill set. So I will take Mackenzie Hughes. I have no money left on the table. I don't know who I'm going to round this up with. It might end up being myself in the lineup, but I don't think too many builds are going to start Connors, Åberg, and Scotty. And that alone, like for me on this show, it's almost going so rogue is what makes this fun to see what a build actually looks like.
As disappointed as Byron is by that selection, the chat is having a great time. You've been accused of stalling, buying time. Albert's asking, Senator, please answer the question. Did you order the code red, Spencer? Byron, are you okay? I want the truth. It's the audience is going off here. So, Byron, let's talk about Mackenzie Hughes because it looks like you're in tears over that last selection.
He's a double agent. This guy. He's working both sides of this thing. He put himself at the turn. He's done the reconnaissance on me already. Love Mackenzie Hughes for this very reason. You know, he's putting at a level that's consistent and elite. You know, his putter is gaining like 5 strokes per tournament for like the last 5 tournaments. It's ridiculous. So I love him. I think he's one of these rogue agents under the radar. Like if he just goes bonkers with the putter and the chipping, I can see him, you know, just double his ball striking, which might be negative, you know. So like it could get rogue there too, but I love it. And I love your Arsen Ekro take as well. These are 2 guys that have been kind of under the radar, but both can sneak through quite nicely. I like them both.
Yeah, look, I mean, that can often be the way that these large GPPs gets decided is just who you get in that kind of bottom 6K range and find some value. So newsflash on Mackenzie Hughes, he will feature towards the end of the show as well. So that's going to be interesting. Make sure you stick around because we give all of our first round leader bets at the end of the draft. So the clock is back on me here after some pretty outrageous picks in the last few selections. And I'm going to go a little bit more of a traditional route in Alex Noren. Obviously, we know he's a great fairway finder. We know he's got the prowess around the green and with his putter in hand. But his approach metrics from 100 to 200 yards are really excellent as well. I like his ability to score on this kind of property and his links to PGA National. I think that it makes him a strong selection at the bottom of the 7K range. He does come with some ownership, so that is my main concern. Byron, I'll go to you. Thoughts on Alex Noren, and are you concerned with his ownership at the moment? I'm currently seeing around 7%.
Oh, that's okay. I don't have ownership in front of me. I was thinking more like 12, 15, because he can get very popular at a very rapid rate, and he often doesn't pay that off, so I'm impartial with him. I'll play him if he's low owned. I won't if he is, I'm leaning on either side of the fence there for sure. So I'm cool with it.
Cool. Sweet. And after that, you are on the clock.
I'm going to take Spence's $6,200 Canadian and raise him with a $6,000 Canadian.
Oh, no.
Nick Taylor. Let's get him.
I can't fill out a lineup now.
You can take Peter Malnati. I'm going to make you take Peter Malnati now because you took my guy. So Nick Taylor is going to be my guy. And I don't do it out of spite. He's got a 24th and a 35th year in his last 3 starts. We know this guy can win any tournament. He is almost a better version of Mackenzie Hughes when he putts unconscious, when he's feeling himself. So give me a 6. You're saving $200 on basically the same version of Mackenzie Hughes. Yeah. So, and you get to box out a large, like 25% of your field, because now they either have to take Jake Knapp or Peter Malnati.
And controversial, very, very controversial. This is why we love to have the Model Maniac on the show, because he always brings it, going straight head to head. Spence steals Mackenzie Hughes off him, comes back, takes Nick Taylor from Spencer. Spencer's Sai, Spence, your Sai said enough, really, but can you expand on why you wanted to take Nick Taylor here at TPC Southland?
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know if, Byron, you even thought...
I didn't mean to.
I don't even, because I didn't even talk about Nick Taylor on the show yesterday. Like, you mentioned him a lot more than I did. It's just, for me, when I get down into this bottom tiered section, there are a handful of names, and unfortunately, I can't even afford a name like Eric Van Rooyen. But there are options like Van Rooyen, Nick Taylor, probably those two specifically above anybody else, where there are these really high ceiling outputs based off of certain metrics, and the floor is last place. Yeah. And that's certainly something that I understand with Nick Taylor here. But, if we want to look at what I deem to be, at least in some ways, a similar course, and that's Pebble Beach, where you get these really small green complexes. Nick Taylor is a former winner at Pebble Beach. It's the reason why, I mean, at this point, if we're just going to, I don't think anybody's going to draft him, but if we're just going to ruin the show for everybody now, it's the reason why I'm going to play Wyndham Clark this week when nobody's going to necessarily want to play him. But there's certain fits to this course that I think have high upside where I'm willing to shoot for the moon. And Clark is one of those in the high $7,000 range. Nick Taylor is that exact option, just much lower down the board at $6,000.
Very, very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how you round this out now, Spencer. Only 2 more 6K options left on the board for you. The audience have gone and taken Eric Cole and Adam Scott. So I'll jump back to you, Byron. Any thoughts on Eric Cole and Adam Scott? And would you have a preference between the two in terms of their value at the moment?
So audience seems to really enjoy guys that have recently just rediscovered some form and have been playing really good golf. Both of them, a little underwhelming mid-season stuff, and both seem to have found their game at a great time. This is, if you're going to play good for a few weeks all year, this is the time to do it, right before kind of getting into the stretch where you keep jumping from bubble to bubble. And both of them are likely on the bubble needing to get into the next top 50. So, Scott's been playing some really exceptional golf lately. And I think Cole as well. So both, are great fits here and like what I get from them.
Yeah, I agree completely, especially with that Adam Scott coming. I mean, Adam Scott was like the darling of everyone on golf Twitter at the beginning of this year, right? Yeah. We were really expecting a huge resurgence. Went dead quiet in the middle of the season, really producing kind of nothing, like a couple of like 12th and 14th, but nothing of note. And then his burst back with a second at the Scottish and then the 10th at the Open Championship. So yeah, very interested to see how he goes this week as well. Byron, you are on the clock. You've got a fair bit of salary actually to play with here, so interested to see who you're going with your 5th pick.
I'm going to go with Peter Malnati. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna take one of the only 2 options Spencer has left here again. So I've done my damage in the $6,000 range, so to speak. So I'm gonna zip up top here to a $6,800 golfer by the name of Cameron Davis. Hasn't been taken yet. So I really fancied his chances last week. Kind of let me down. Played well here last time. He's kind of been tee-to-green these golf courses to pieces as well the last few weeks. And if that continues and his putter doesn't show up, I mean, there's no real better course to do it than here. You know, this is what we've been speaking all week, is you can win without putting well. And he's been doing just that prior to the Wyndham, which I'm okay with scrapping that off my mind. You know, if someone played badly there, cool. I don't really care. But if they played well, you know, I'll take that into consideration. So, AKA Aaron Rye. But yeah, give me Cam Davis. I think he frees up some really nice salary there. And I like his chances as a flop lag candidate.
Yeah, look, an interesting selection. I do sometimes like to take that contrarian route where you go for a player who was very, very popular the week before and didn't produce, and so therefore you get depressed ownership the week after because everyone's been just burned by someone the week before. We've also seen with Cam Davis a history on some of these kind of like nigglier courses where his driver actually gets taken out of hand that he performs really, really well. RBC Heritage, for example, at Harbourtown really comes to mind with his output there. Spence, I'll jump to you quickly. Cameron Davis and Scott and Cole went in those last three picks. Any commentary on one or two of those?
My model liked Derek Cole. I thought he was one of the better values in the 6,000 range. I had him in a matchup last week against Justin Rose. Considered going back down a similar path against a name like a JT Poston. Didn't end up going in that direction. I like Cole just fine, though. I'm kind of trying to scramble here myself, David. I really don't know how to end this build, unfortunately, because of what Byron has done to me.
I mean, I'm slightly disappointed that Byron didn't take Peter Malnati because then I think I would have been obligated to take Jack Knapp and just ensure that Spence had zero chance of getting a six-man lineup.
Has anyone outdrafted themselves on this?
I almost did once. I put myself in a very similar position a handful of weeks ago.
Oh my God.
It hasn't happened before where someone hasn't been able to fill out a legitimate lineup, but it would have been hilarious to watch Spence have to submit a 5-man lineup this week. So
I mean, nothing better as a guest showing up here to guarantee yourself a third place finish. You know, I should have really shot for a floor there and just doubled down on the rake this week.
Yeah, there would have been it was an opportunity missed. I think.
Yeah,
I
thinking
think
about it
an
now,
opportunity
it's
missed.
sad.
We'll regret in the future, although not that Peter Malnati, like you may actually be better.
Well, I mean,
having Peter Malnati in your lineup.
I wish you guys would have done it. It would have given a free win to the audience, and I feel like I am an extension to the audience this week and most weeks. So if you want to give the audience a win, I can live with that.
Yeah, and I do think that's a fair point. Is that if we'd done that, then we're also just giving away first place to the audience automatically. So I think that's probably a fair call as well. I'm gonna go, and it doesn't really matter which one I do because Spence can't afford either of these guys. But I'm gonna take Rory McIlroy here, 11,100. He's got a very good record on this golf course. It's not a major, so he is less likely to choke away victory than the miscut at the Open and obviously what he did at the US Open. Outside of that, he had a very good week at the Olympics, finished 5th, one of the top in the field for strokes gained approach. He's both long and accurate off the tee, which I really like. He's past winner at PGA National. He's had a 3rd and 4th here in his last 5 appearances. So I do think that this is the time of the year when Rory McIlroy really heats up. The FedEx Cup playoffs mean a lot to him. He'll be really trying to shoot himself up the leaderboard and ensure his place within those top 3 going into the Tour Championship. So I'll take Rory here, and then Spence, you are on the clock with the back-to-back picks. I can't take Rory. I can't.
Dave?
He's gone first. Thank you to Albert pointing that out. I'm going to go Xander Schauffele then. There's the other option. I'll take Xander. I'll spend up. Second best golfer in the field, second best golfer this year. He's been on absolute fire. So yeah, happy to take Xander. Xander or Rory for me, either a good place.
I feel like you have to give Spencer one of your players now. After taking trying to take the audience's player, I think we have to take from the rich
or automatically become a 5 or 6. Yeah, I mean part of the trouble with trying to quarterback the show is that I've got the small screen up this time rather than the large screen. So because I'm jumping all over the place, I'll use that as my excuse.
Okay, Dave.
Spence, you are back to back. I'm gonna take Xander. Any comment on Xander and not Rory?
I mean, I would rather have Rory, but I mean, obviously, when he goes 101 in the draft, it's going to be hard to get them. Let me ask you this, David, and this is me trying to buy a little bit more time for myself, even though I only have one of two choices I can make. Would you have gone Ludwig Oberg if he would have been on the board?
Yeah, probably. I would have gone Ludwig just simply because of the ownership discount that you're getting on him. Like, I'm seeing him by far the lowest owned of all of those guys up the top. I do think that he's a top 5 golfer in the world, and I'm just happy to play the ownership game on him. Plus, the salary saving would have opened up more options for my next selection as well.
I think that's fair. I mean, that makes me feel a little bit better that I've now backed myself into a corner with whatever this is to talk about these magnificent golfers that I am choosing from the bottom.
I would love Ludwig in my lineup. I would if I will build this and then add Ludwig just off, for my own lineup this week. I think, why the hell not?
Yeah, it looks like we're on consensus in there. While Spence decides if he likes Peter Malnati or Jake Knapp more, Zach is dead. Silent Assassin thinks I should forfeit. Albert thinks I should forfeit. Zach votes me off the island. Albert thinks that me and Spence should both only be allowed 5 picks this week, and Zach has extinguished my torch. So thank you guys for pointing that out. It does happen. But yeah, I'm happy to take Xander. Look, he's a great golfer, and if he's saving $1,000 on Scotty Scheffler, I think that he's a viable way to approach the week.
Yeah. All right. I will move us forward. I have made a decision.
Okay, buddy. May the force be with you. Yeah.
I am first going to leave the decision that everybody's waiting for of which 6,000 golfer I am playing. And I'm going to say my decision at this range was either Brendan Todd or Patrick Rogers. I'm going to shoot for the upside with Rogers. Rogers is hated in the market. I understand that. There's one little key piece of information that my model liked about him. I ran all Zoysia courses and expected off the tee performances. Like, that's Valhalla, that's TPC Craig's Ranch. It's the handful that we get throughout the year. Rogers ended up being a top 5 expected off the tee performer. It's really the only category in my model where it liked him in that, but I know what Brendan Todd is at the end of the day. Like, I think in order to actually shoot for high-end success in a no-cut tournament, I'd rather try to move up the board. So I'm going to take Rogers, and then I'm going to wrap this up. There is no world. I don't even know what's wrong with Jake Knapp at this point and why he withdrew from the tournament. I'm not playing Peter Malnati. I'll play Jake Knapp and bet on the other side.
I mean, we would win in a fight. You'd take one arm from Jake Knapp and have him go against Peter Malnati. Because I think that's what's happening this week, is maybe he's got like a bum wrist or something.
That's an interesting conundrum, actually. Is Peter Malnati versus Jake Knapp with one arm? Who wins? It's a tough one. Yeah, look, I think Jake Knapp's the only logical selection out of those two. Patrick Rogers is interesting because I wonder, Spence, would you have considered Seamus Power there? Did he enter your frame of mind? Because he is popular this week.
Yeah, Seamus is another name. I should have included him also. I certainly think he's a name that you can consider if you find yourself down in this section. Like, I thought Rogers, maybe in reality, if we're actually looking for upside that enters the mix, Seamus is probably better than Brendan Todd at very similar ownership. I don't have a problem with the Seamus route. I still stand by. I think Rogers is just such a boomer bust commodity with lower ownership. So I'll take that route and kind of bet on this decent floor that we've gotten from him recently with some somewhat intriguing metrics. And of course, like, I mean, his number one strength is his distance off the tee, and we're going to remove a lot of that from the mix. And it's one of the reasons why some of the upside numbers have concerns. But yeah, I think Seamus would have been fine also.
Spencer, Rogers' last 5 tournaments have been no worse than a 37th. He's like averaging 30th position on all sorts of courses. So I think he's sneaky, man. Like, he's actually averaging 3 spots better than Seamus over the same like period of time. So I like it.
Him and Mackenzie Hughes had very similar prediction grades in my model for like safety, which is kind of a weird answer to give there, but there was at least an elite skill set that I could find from each one of those names, just in varying directions of that answer.
I love it.
Well, controversial end to Spence's lineup. Jake Knapp or Peter Malnati will be one of the age-old questions. I like Byron. Feel free to jump at the chat and tell us who would win in a fight, Peter Malnati or Jake Knapp with one arm. I think that's a lot of fun as well. Look, I've got 6,900 here. I think that if Harris English hadn't withdrawn last week, this would be a really easy selection for me. The fact that he did WD raises some questions. FYI, I had him as my last selection last week on the PGA Draftcast. He didn't even start, so Joel, I believe, put the hex on Harris English. The rest of my selections were 43rd or better, including a number in the top 20. So, unfortunately, ruined my chances of taking out the Draftcast last week, Harris English. So, I'm not going to go back to him here. Instead, I'm going to take Tom Hoge at 6,800. Yes, we've seen some decreased approach metrics from him in the last couple of starts, but if we look on a longer-term basis, over the last 6 months, he is second in this field for strokes gained approach behind Scotty Scheffler, and this tournament does have a tendency to reward the best ball strikers. So I like the fact that we're going to hopefully see some reversion to that elite ball striking that we see produced. I like the fact that he's 22nd in this field for accuracy as well. Of promise is the fact that his driving accuracy has started to come back the last few tournaments with Tom Hoge, and we're seeing increased performance there. He finished 12th here on debut back when this was a full field event as well. So I'll take Tom Hoge to round out the lineup here. Byron, any thoughts on the Hoge Master, and do you have your last selection?
Yeah, I've made massive amounts of money on Tom Hoge betting him top 20 this year. He hits top 20 rates at a ridiculous number, but the top 10 numbers, are not there. He's actually lost lots of money in that market. So it's kind of interesting. He's found his sweet spot and he's kind of lost it the last little while. So I think he's more of a form guy. You can kind of see it when it keeps rolling, but maybe this week he bounces back, but I'm not betting him this week, which kind of goes and, says what I think of him.
For sure.
I'm going to go with a really random play and just go with Victor Hovland here. Has anyone taken him? I'm looking on a small screen as well.
No, I probably would have been the one that would have taken him
Yeah.
if I had more than $6,000 left.
You've got so many expensive players on your team, Spencer. I couldn't distinguish what's going on over there. But I'll take Victor Hovland just to round this out. I don't want Cantley or Tommy Fleetwood. I just feel like those two are just basically the same silver medalist for centuries kind of guys right now. So give me the guy that can also win this thing in a lineup that has a Colin Morikawa in it too. So Victor is struggling around the green, and I think if he can just dial it in with ball striking, he's doing wonderful stuff in that department. So he seems like he's in a good space. Seems like he's found his groove a bit. I'll take a gamble on a golfer that played well here last year as well and could find his stride again at this time of year.
David, can I take this really fast before we move on? Because I do have a pretty large take on Victor Hovland this week.
The floor is yours, my friend.
All right, so if we want to look at Zoysia fairways, let's go back to Valhalla. That's a tournament where Victor Hovland moved himself up the leaderboard. Really, if we want to be honest, the only good performance in reality, for the most part, that we've gotten from him in 2024. I made this argument during the Olympics, and it didn't come to fruition, but when you add water to the mix, and specifically here when you lower the green complex size, it does start accentuating certain approach metrics. And I took him at the Olympics. He was a top 15 projected scorer. What I was most intrigued about with that performance is that he actually gained with the irons after going ice cold with them for a while. So I think that Olympic performance, we're only talking about, I don't have it up in front of me right now, it was like a stroke or a stroke and a half over the course of 4 days. We're not talking about some overwhelming amount that he threw into the mix, but we did get the turnaround with the approach game that we were looking for. He's gained off the tee in 8 tournaments. Of the high-end golfers, which I will still consider him that, he's one of the elite putters from that mix. The around the green game is terrible. Like, I don't even know what his true baseline is at this point. I worry a little bit about him chipping on a surface like this, but when we're talking about pure upside plays, I really like Victor Hovland as just a shoot for the moon play and just know what you're getting into here. And for Byron's lineup specifically, like he's left a lot of money on the table. Hovland is going to be a upside candidate. Like nobody's going to mimic that build in a large field contest, which in a 70 man, like you already get unique points just from that.
You just messed my stuff up with so many expensive guys. You know, like I was hoping to at least grab one of the top 4 or 5 guys, and I don't have any available to me.
Yeah, well, I mean,
play
look,
defense
Byron,
sometimes.
and Byron, you did have the second selection, so you could. There were opportunities for you to steal here as well, I would think. But Victor Hovland's interesting. I like what Spence touched on in terms of Valhalla being another's always a fairway spot where he finished third, and as you said, Spence, the most notable kind of performance of 2024 for Hovland. I never thought for any chance after he won the FedEx Cup last season that we'd be talking about a situation where Victor Hovland was outside the top 50 and might not even get into the signature events in 2025. I think I've just dropped out a little bit. I don't know if you guys caught all of that. Did my internet drop?
No, you started getting blurry at the end, but we heard everything.
Okay, that's good. No, Victor Hovland, obviously Valhalla and Source the Fairways. I think that's a really, really positive correlation. Audience, last selection, Seb Striker. I do really like Seb Striker here. Again, he's one of the biggest jumps for me in terms of Zoysa performance. Byron, any comments on Seb Striker? It seems like he's got a ton of upside.
Yeah, you kind of just betting on what he can be versus what you're expecting him to be this week. So I guess that's another way of saying he's got upside.
Yeah, Spence, any comments on Seb Striker before we get to our first round leader bets?
No, I think you guys said it best with everything. And, you know, I will say about my lineup, if I could put in Nick Taylor and then any combination of, I think Seamus is a great play. Like I'm happy David brought him up. Seamus is a realistic candidate, top 35 expected producer and weighted tee to green production. He's a top 30 expected performer in weighted proximity. I think he would have worked perfectly fine. Like some combination of that with Nick Taylor. I really like my build, even with it being boom or bust, but I can't help but look at this and just see the grossest lineup that's ever been constructed with Jake Knapp being on it. There was no world, and I guess this is what happens on the PGA Draftcast, where I thought Jake Knapp would be in my lineup. So let's just hope that he returns to early season form. And do we know what's wrong with him of why he pulled out of the last tournament?
I want to say it's his wrist. I was following him at the John Deere, and he kept fiddling with it, man. So I don't know. It might be a recurring thing, but also maybe, I don't know, his girlfriend was in town, so it can't be that bad. But I don't know.
If assuming I end up getting a withdrawal here, which I think is like definitely on the cards.
Yes.
This doesn't feel like a Joel spot where Joel has put his curse on to me. I think this is my own doing where I've backed myself so far into a corner that it was either Malnati or Knapp, and you have to make a decision somewhere.
Well, there you have it. One of the most entertaining lineups, I think, from Spence that we've seen in some time on the show. Some very controversial picks towards the end. We're not done yet, though. We always, at the end of the PGA Draftcast, love to give out our first round leader plays. I'll bring the draft board down. Now, last week on my first round leader card, I had Billy Horschel, who hit the frame for us, got a top 5, finished second for the first round. I had a lineup going with Billy Horschel, Brian Harman, and I was challenged to continue taking players with initials ending BH. Well, Bo Hosler beat us to first round leader in the end. So there goes some karma for me. But Spence, I'll head to you first. Do you have any first round leaders this week for the FedEx Sanctuary Championship?
Victor Hovland, Wyndham Clark. I'm going to bet on the upside of those two golfers. Keep it very small this week. I'm not looking to take on a bunch of exposure. I thought, you know, anytime you get a 70-man field, you get more or less prices that feel gross on the surface. But the one thing I will say to that, I thought there was a lot of hold percentage in this market where books realize it's a bit of a crapshoot and they kind of price this accordingly to where I didn't see much value. So I'll take 2 random shots that I had upside for, realize they can come dead last and just go from there.
Yeah, we do love some good upside with the first round leader bets. Byron, have you had a look at the first round leader market and anyone that you like at what number?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it short and sweet as well. I'm going to go with Justin Thomas, 40-1. I think he plays well here, and man, he's been firing in round ones lately. Like he is, that horse that's like in high def and then becomes like a stick horse at the very end kind of picture. That's how Justin Thomas's like rounds are starting nowadays. Like he is a fine ass, and then it's just out of control when it gets into the weekend. But the other guy I'm going to go with is Patrick Cantley as well. Similar situation, high upside in these round one situations. Has played well here before, finished second to the glove man last year. So I need some redemption from him, and maybe he can give it to me in round one.
Justin Thomas, last 2 starts, he has been third after the first round, and then he was first round leader the start before that. So another couple of fast starts for Justin Thomas there, and Byron is hoping for a third. I've got 3 players for my first round leader. First is Hideki Matsuyama at 33-1. We had him at first round leader at the Olympics. Again, at the same number, 33-1. He has been on this course 60. He's shot a 67, a 68, a 68, a 65 in his 4 first rounds here. So coming off a first round leader at the Olympics, like him to go back to back here. Then I'm going to back that up with Tom Kim, 40-1. I'm going to endorse Sia's selection for the first round leader. He was third at the Olympics. Again, he was on our first round leader card. We had 3 players there. They were Hideki Matsuyama, Tom Kim, Sepp Striker. They finished first, third, and 6th. And Tom Kim was third there for the first round. He shot a 66. He was first at the Travelers for the first round leader, got 62 in there. I don't think TPC River Highlands is the worst comp course for what you can expect at TPC Southwind in terms of what the course demands. And in his 2 rounds that he's played at Southwind, he's shot a 64 and a 66 in the first round. So I like Tom Kim for first round leader there at 40-1. And I did promise to make a return, and Silent Assassin bringing up the Mackenzie Hughes pick. I did promise Mackenzie Hughes would make a return at the end of the show. Mackenzie Hughes, first round leader, 80-1, is probably my favorite first round leader bet on the market at the moment. He is priced right down the bottom. Now, he's played 4 times at Southwind. He's shot a 66, a 67, a 67, and a 68. No worse than a 68 in his 4 appearances at TPC Southwind in the opening round. The 3M Open, he was second after the first round. He shot a 64. At the Open, he was 4th after the first round, shot a 69. And then at the Travelers, as I mentioned, decent correlation to what we expect here. He shot a 65 in the opening round. So you can get him at 80-1 to be the first round leader. He gets a 7:40 a.m. tee time as well, going off in the morning, which I do like. Guys, that's my first round leader card, but anything that we've missed this week, anything that you want to touch on?
I will say I love the Mackenzie Hughes and Hideki Matsuyama first round leader plays. I probably will tell you on that. I'll put it over in the Win Daily chat that we have there if we have anything there to talk about. But no, I like those 2 plays. I think it was an exciting show. Not exactly where I was expecting to go with conversations, but that's what you're always going to get in a 70-man field at the end of the day. You have one selection specifically, and like I can talk about backing myself in the corner. Like I specifically did that by taking Oberg when I did. It makes me feel better to know that David would have jumped and grabbed him from me. So like I don't have regrets based off of that, but it's unfortunately what comes into play when you make one little change and then I can't hit delete or the X button and move away from any players and say, let's rebuild this now.
Yeah, I mean, look, super interesting that Scheffler fell to where he did in the selections as well. I think me not taking Scheffler did help to back you into a corner there. Byron, it's a pleasure as always to have you on, mate. Anything to add this week, and where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Back 9 Bets on Mayor Media, and then just on X at the Model Maniac. I'm always over there doing my thing, and great show. It was lots of fun. Enjoyed hanging out with the 2 of you, and unbeknowingly to me, Nick Taylor became one of the most important picks in DraftKings history, and I'm very sad I didn't take the opportunity to really box out both of you with DNFs. There was a chance I could have been the last standing drafter, minus the audience, just going head to head this week. So next time I'll work on that a bit better, but it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much again for your time. We love having your expertise. Make sure you are following the Model Maniac on Twitter and all of his shows and all of his articles. It's always excellent. And if you're not signed up to Win Daily yet, make sure that you give this video a like, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the entertainment. It's a unique show, right? Like the fact that we are drafting lineups against each other puts us in these positions where we have to talk about guys in that 6,000 range and why we like them and why they might be a viable option. And that can be really the key to winning a large GPP. We've also got a promotion in the chat at the moment. The picks have been absolutely on fire as of late. We've constantly returned over 20% ROI for the last 3 seasons on our betting picks. And there's a code in the bottom of this description right now where you can grab 50% off on Win Daily Sports membership. So that is a no-brainer. Make sure you smash that like button, as Zach said, but there's only one thing left to do. Byron, what is it?
Sports.